On the line with us is Ben Dixon, host of the Benjamin Dixon Show. The BenjaminDixonShow.com is the website. You can tweet him at the BPD Show. Benjamin P. Dixon Show, the BPD Show. Do I have that right, Ben?
Yes, Sean. I'm Thom.
Yeah.
I have an easier Twitter handle by now, but yeah, the BPD.
There you go. So this fascinating story here on the rise of, I'm not sure the rise is the right word, but, white supremacy and this, in fact, this was actually over at Al Jazeera. And the quote, it was by Patrick Strickland. The headline is "Threats and Attacks, White Supremacists Target Campuses." Group documents 330 bias incidents on U.S. college and university campuses from late November 16 to March of 2017. So that's like over a 4 or 5 month period, 330 bias incidents. And the professor who was quoted, the article starts out talking about how he suddenly just was inundated with this white hate as a result of his an old comment that he had made years ago being reposted onto, I think it was Stormfront, one of the neo-Nazi websites. Right. And he uses this phrase at the end. He said, "There are white supremacists who will come to kill people and who have killed people over the last several months for less than simply speaking about the issue." And then he said, "Murders have always been used to enforce racism." And can you speak to this? You're, as a African-American talk show host and member of the, citizen of the United States, where are we at on this, and what has the Trump administration done to this country?
So, Thom, I think what the Trump administration has done to the country is merely allowed this level of bigotry and hatred to foment to the top in a way that it wasn't so welcomed previously. We're kind of hearkening back to, I guess, the time that he thought America was more greater than it is now. But a part of what we experience now is sort of this reaffirming, this mobilization of bigotry that really rallies behind Donald Trump. He gives voice to a level of vitriol and bigotry that we have not seen in the White House in generations. And so as a online commentator, radio host myself, I do find exactly what this professor from Texas A&M University, Tommy Curry, found is when he's speaking about the issue, merely discussing the issue becomes a threat to members of the alt-right neo-Nazi groups. And so if you and I have a conversation about historical usage of weapons and violence as a means of liberation, if we just talk about it, that's seen as a threat to neo-Nazi groups. And subsequently, it leads to actual threats of tangible violence, real violence against us. So it's almost as though you and I, we can't even talk about racism. We can't talk about liberation without suffering death threats from groups that have been mobilized even more now that Donald Trump is in the White House.
Yeah, and I can attest to that from first-person experience. I'm looking at an interesting arc here, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Benjamin Dixon. When President Obama was first elected in 2008, well, first of all, during the Bush presidency, George W. Bush was, at least on matters of race, he had a fairly reasonably integrated cabinet. He did not speak in the code like his father did, oddly enough. And, his father spoke in coded racist terms. Reagan spoke in coded racist terms. Bob Dole spoke in coded racist terms. I'm not sure I saw that much of it coming out of Mitt Romney or John McCain, but and George W. Bush was fairly reasonable for a Republican anyway. But when Obama was elected, there was this moment in 2008 where the entire world had tears in their eyes. All of us in the United States, or many of us in the United States, had tears in our eyes. This is it. We have broken through. The BS is over. The hatred is going to end. And instead what came out was Donald Trump arguing that Barack Obama was not actually an American, that he was not born here, that he was the other. And for 6 years, this guy pounded on this racist dog whistle. And now he's in the White House. And we've seen this change. I mean, during the time that President Obama was president and Trump was leading the racist brigades, there was something going on, but it wasn't black people being handed nooses everywhere they go. Unless it was. I mean, tell me. It seemed to me like it was much, much less. And then it was like the minute that Trump got elected, it was like all of a sudden all the white racists, the Richard Spencers of the world and all of their compatriots, suddenly they came out of the closet.
Right.
Am I exaggerating this?
You know, I can't say that you're exaggerating it. I will say that what we see now has always been here in America. It's just to what level is it accepted in our normal discourse? I mean, if you think about it, our Overton window now includes neo-Nazis like Richard Spencer. He can get on CNN and discuss his fears of white genocide and white supremacy and everything. You know, it's now just fomented to the surface, right? This has always been in America. And I think Donald Trump has contributed to the fact that it is not only on the rise, but it's in our face. It's a part of our normal discourse. I mean, this is a problem that I think was in an incubator stage during the Obama administration. While half of America did have tears in their eyes, and we thought for a glimmering moment that perhaps we had overcome something, the reality of it is Fox News and the conservative right, I mean, they moved immediately into a level of opposition that included not only dog whistles, but outright overt racism. And that allowed it to fester and foment, not just foment, I'm sorry, but to fester to a boiling fever pitch. Then Donald Trump seized on it, right? He of all people was perfectly suited to take advantage of this disease that was malignant. It is malignant in the United States, but now he has allowed it to come to the top, and we're just simply seeing what has always been here. But I mean, I for one am of the opinion, Tom, that if we can't get rid of it, I don't want to see it every single day, and I certainly don't want to see it in the White House. And so while I can say that it has always been here, I do feel like this is uniquely different because now it's on the front page of our newspapers and it's being discussed on our mainstream media. Is
it possible, we're talking with Benjamin Dixon, the host of the Benjamin Dixon Show. Ben, is it possible that there's actually an upside to this, although I'm trying to think of a historical equivalent, maybe the women's movement, you know, the backlash against the women's movement in the 70s in particular. But is it possible that, because that kind of revealed the naked misogyny of many of the men who were in opposition to the women's movement, you know, and I'm not just talking about Rush Limbaugh calling women feminazis and things. Is it possible that not just people of color in this country, but the white allies of people of color in this country are being just as activated, just as awakened as the white supremacist racists are being awakened, and that at the end of the day, you know, that moral arc of Dr. King, this is going to bend our way. Is that Tom being Pollyanna again?
Listen, I suffer from the same idealistic gene that you have there, Tom. I hope that's the case. The only historical connection I can make is what happened in the Scopes trial of the 20s, where it exposed a level of thinking that really kind of pushed not to get into the religious conversation, but it pushed the evangelical, the rejection of science community. It pushed them into the background, and it was no longer acceptable in the foreground of the American discourse. Hopefully, if we continue to expose what is really in the United States, I don't believe that we can get rid of it. But if we expose it, perhaps we can relegate it to the dregs of society where it belongs. In terms of activating our allies, I do agree that this is really an issue that is best suited for our white allies to step up and speak out about. But I also believe that it's causing us to have difficult conversations amongst the progressive movement, the liberal movement, the Democratic Party, to really smoke out the unaddressed racism, or even if it's not direct racism, the tacit racism that exists throughout America. So I think there's some good that can come out of it, but to be honest with you, it's a long road.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would never, and I don't think anybody would say, hey, you know, let's beat ourselves on the head with a hammer so that when we stop, it'll feel better, which is sort of a variation on, I suppose, what I'm talking about. But it strikes me that You know, we have had more people since 9/11, more Americans have been murdered by white supremacists than any other group. We have a terrorism problem in this country. We have, by and large, white police, although, you know, the blue is not limited to just white people, the blue mentality. But we've had, you know, police murdering people of color. We've had, you know, no shortage of white people murdering and terrorizing people of color and their allies. And we have just a minute until we hit a break here, Ben. But, you know, thoughts on where we go from here?
Well, we have to deal with the issue that's in front of us right now, and that's a White House that is friendly to neo-Nazis, a White House friendly to a White House that is accepting of white supremacy at levels that we haven't seen in generations. We have to address that president. We have to address the fact that that president gets his news from one of the worst sites online, Breitbart.com, gets his news from Fox News, and that the American government is indirectly being run by these organizations. And if we don't address that, then we will continue to see this downward spiral where we won't confront white terrorism in the United States, and we'll forever be focused on brown terrorism. We'll be forever focused on Islamic radical terrorism, or whatever phrase Donald Trump feels is acceptable. We'll always focus on that and never focus on the fact that we have a man in the White House right now who is, for lack of a better phrase, in bed with organizations that trumpet and they herald white supremacy.
Yeah, and that's not a good thing for the United States. It's not a good thing, frankly, for the White House. It's not a good thing for our body politic, and it's definitely not a good thing, you know, for a good chunk of our population. Benjamin Dixon, host of the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. TheBenjaminDixonShow.com. One of the best progressive commentators out there. You can tweet him at TheBPD Show. Ben, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Good talking. We'll be back.